My boss fired me on my first break in 7 years. He didn't know who was sitting across from me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Bryn Hale, and for 7 years, my life was nothing but work. Early mornings, late nights, missed holidays, everything. I told myself it would be worth it one day. That if I just kept going, something good would come out of it. That day, I finally stepped away. Just a simple break. Nothing big. I picked a quiet place, sat down, and tried to slow my thoughts for the first time in years. It felt strange, like I didn't even know how to relax anymore. Across from me sat someone who had been waiting to talk. Calm, observant, the kind of person who notices more than they says. At first, it felt like a normal conversation. But there was something in the way he looked at me, like he already knew more than I did. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting something routine. Instead, everything inside me went still. One message. One decision. No warning, no call, no conversation. Just like that, everything I had built was gone. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. It didn't feel real. 7 years reduced to a few cold lines on a screen. I slowly looked up again, and the man across from me didn't react with surprise. He didn't ask questions. He just watched me carefully, like this was exactly what he had expected to happen. That's when I realized, this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something I hadn't seen coming. Working there meant carrying more than my job title ever showed. I became the person everyone turned to when things started falling apart. Deadlines slipping, clients angry, systems failing, I stepped in quietly and made it work. No noise, no credit, just results. Dax Renner didn't run the office with warmth. He ran it with pressure. Every conversation felt like a test you couldn't pass unless you kept your head down. Speaking up wasn't encouraged. It was noticed, and not in a good way. So I learned to stay quiet and deliver more than expected. Over time, I stopped asking for recognition. I just focused on getting things done. Reports that carried his name often started on my desk. Presentations he was praised for were built late at night by me. I knew it, others suspected it, but no one said anything out loud. There were moments when I thought things might finally change. A few words here and there, small hints about growth, about moving forward. I held on to those words longer than I should have. They gave me just enough hope to keep going. I adjusted my life around the job. Missed calls from family, cancelled plans, weekends that didn't feel like weekends. It slowly became normal. I told myself sacrifice was part of building something meaningful. Looking back, I can see how much I gave without questioning it. I believed consistency would be seen eventually. That effort like mine couldn't stay invisible forever. But the truth is, some people don't value what you do, they depend on it staying unseen. And I didn't realize that I had become exactly what he needed, until the moment he decided he didn't need me anymore. The night it finally caught up with me didn't feel dramatic at first. I just felt unusually tired, like my body was heavier than normal. I tried to push through it like I always did, telling myself it would pass. But it didn't. Everything started to blur, and the next thing I remember was waking up somewhere quiet, with people around me speaking in low voices. That moment forced me to face something I had been avoiding for years. I couldn't keep going like this. No job was worth losing myself completely. When I was told I needed to slow down, it didn't feel like advice, it felt like a line I had already crossed. The next morning, I sat staring at my screen longer than usual before typing out a simple request. It wasn't long or dramatic. Just a few days to step away. Even writing it felt strange, like I was doing something wrong. When I finally told Dax, he didn't react the way I expected. There was no pushback, no questions, no pressure to delay it. He agreed almost too quickly. Then came that look, something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't concern or support. It felt calculated, like he had already thought this through. For a second, I hesitated. Something inside me said this wasn't normal. But I pushed that feeling aside. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe he was just being reasonable for once. I walked away telling myself this was a good sign. That maybe things were finally shifting in a better direction. I didn't know then that this small decision, something meant to help me, had already set something else in motion. That morning felt unfamiliar. I woke up without an alarm, without rushing, without checking emails the second I opened my eyes. It should have felt peaceful, but instead it felt strange, like I didn't quite belong in that quiet. I chose a small, calm place for lunch, somewhere away from noise and pressure. When I arrived, he was already there. Callum Vire. He looked composed, the kind of person who didn't waste words. Weeks earlier, he had contacted me with a simple message asking to meet, nothing detailed, just enough to make me curious. I almost ignored it back then, but something made me agree. Sitting across from him, the conversation started slow. He didn't rush into anything. Instead, he asked about my work, my role, how things really functioned behind the scenes. Not the kind of questions people ask casually. He listened closely, like every answer mattered. I noticed he already seemed familiar with certain things I hadn't said yet. Small details, patterns, decisions, he spoke about them in a way that made it clear he had been paying attention for a while. It made me slightly uneasy, but also curious. There was no pressure in his tone, no clear direction to the conversation. But it didn't feel random either. It felt like he was slowly putting pieces together, waiting for the right moment to say something more. At the time, I thought it was just a meeting, maybe an opportunity one hadn't explored yet. I didn't realize I was sitting in front of someone who already knew far more about my situation than I did. That quiet lunch didn't just interrupt my routine. It quietly shifted everything I thought I understood. In the middle of our conversation, my phone lit up again. At first, I almost ignored it. I didn't want anything to pull me back into work on the one day I had stepped away. But something about the timing made me check. The message was short. Cold. Final. I read it once, then again, hoping I misunderstood. But there was nothing unclear about it. My role was gone. Effective immediately. No discussion, no transition, no respect for the years I had given. A strange silence filled my head. The noise around me faded, like everything had moved further away. I didn't feel angry right away, just empty. Like something had been taken from me before I even had the chance to react. I tried to open a file, just to be sure, but everything was already locked. My accounts, my access, everything I had built my routine around, it had all been shut off in seconds. It felt unreal how fast it happened. I placed my phone down slowly, staring at the table for a moment. I didn't want to show how much it hit me, but my hands gave it away. They wouldn't stay still. When I finally looked up, Callum was watching me, calm and steady. There was no confusion on his face, no surprise. Just understanding. Then he spoke, not loudly, not with emotion, just a simple question that cut deeper than anything else. He asked if I truly believed things would end smoothly for me. That's when something shifted inside me. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't random. And whatever just happened, he had already seen it coming. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, trying to steady myself. Then Callum leaned back slightly, like he had been waiting for this moment. His voice stayed calm, but what he said next changed everything I thought I understood. He told me he wasn't just some outsider offering a random opportunity. He had deeper ties to the company, ones that didn't show up on org charts or daily meetings. He had been observing things quietly for a long time, watching how decisions were made and who was really doing the work. Then he started mentioning details that only someone inside would know. Specific projects, timelines, outcomes that didn't match the official records. He pointed out how certain successes had been redirected, how the credit always seemed to land in the same place, even when the effort came from somewhere else. As he spoke, pieces started to fall into place. Moments I had brushed off. Times when things felt slightly off, but I ignored them because I trusted the process. It became clear that what I saw as normal wasn't normal at all, it was controlled. He explained that my sudden approval for time away wasn't a kind gesture. It was convenient timing. Without me present, it was easier to shift things around, to close gaps, to make changes without questions. Removing me quietly was part of keeping everything smooth on the surface. I felt a mix of anger and clarity settle in. Not loud or explosive, just sharp and steady. For the first time, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't guessing. What I had believed for years wasn't just wrong, it had been shaped that way on purpose. And now, I was finally seeing it clearly. It didn't hit me all at once. It came in pieces, like my mind was replaying moments I never fully questioned before. Small details started lining up in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Those times I stayed late fixing something that was urgent but never really acknowledged. The projects where my input disappeared once they were presented. The promises that always sounded close but somehow never arrived. At first, I used to think it was just how things worked in a busy environment. Maybe I needed to be more patient. Maybe recognition came later than effort. That's what I kept telling myself to stay focused. But now, sitting there, I saw a pattern I had been blind to for years. It wasn't random. It was structured. Every move had a direction I didn't notice at the time. Dax never pushed me forward, but he also never let me step out of place. I was useful when things needed to be fixed quickly. I was reliable when pressure increased. But once everything stabilized, I was no longer needed in the same way. What hurt wasn't just losing the job. It was realizing how long I had been part of something without truly being valued in it. I wasn't part of the spotlight. I was part of the machinery behind it. Even the timing of everything made sense now. The break, the silence, the fast decision. It wasn't chaos, it was coordination. I sat there feeling strangely still. Not confused anymore. Not searching for answers. Just aware. For years, I thought I was building something stable. But in reality, I had been used to build something that didn't include me. Callum didn't try to comfort me or tell me things would get better. He just waited until I had processed what he had already said. Then he leaned forward slightly and changed the direction of the conversation completely. He told me there was more going on than I realized, and that what I had experienced wasn't isolated. It was part of a larger pattern that someone needed to bring into the open. But to do that, he needed someone who had lived inside it long enough to understand how everything actually worked. He wasn't asking for guesses or assumptions. He needed facts, memory, and detail, things that don't appear in reports but exist in real experience. The kind of knowledge only someone on the inside carries without realizing it. As he spoke, I started to understand what he was really offering. It wasn't about revenge in the emotional sense. It was about clarity. About pulling back the surface and showing what had been hidden underneath for years. I stayed quiet at first. Part of me didn't want to step back into anything connected to that place. It still felt too fresh, too sharp. But another part of me couldn't ignore what I was hearing. He wasn't forcing me. There was no pressure in his voice. Just a simple truth, without someone who understood the system from the inside, nothing would change. Everything would stay exactly as it was. That's when I realized why he had reached out to me in the first place. It wasn't random. It wasn't curiosity. It was because I had been in the middle of it all along, even if I never saw it that way. And for the first time since everything started falling apart, I wasn't just the one affected. I was the one who could actually change the outcome. I didn't rush into anything. After that conversation, I took time to think clearly instead of reacting. For the first time, I focused on facts rather than feelings. If something was going to be done, it had to be solid enough that no one could dismiss it later. I started going back through old records and project details I still had access to from memory. Dates, changes, and patterns that once seemed normal now looked different when viewed together. Small inconsistencies began to stand out more clearly. Then I compared them with what actually got reported. Numbers didn't always match. Some results were adjusted after I had already submitted my part. In a few cases, entire sections of my work were credited to others without explanation. I also remembered conversations that seemed harmless at the time. Quick instructions, last-minute changes, or quiet decisions that shifted responsibility away from me. When I looked at all of it together, it formed a picture I hadn't seen before. Callum helped organize what I was finding, but I was the one connecting the missing pieces. The deeper we went, the clearer it became that this wasn't accidental. There was a consistent effort to reshape outcomes and control how things were presented. Emails added another layer. Messages that had been buried in threads showed direction from above, guiding how results should appear rather than how they actually were. It wasn't about performance, it was about perception. Each new detail made it harder to deny what had been happening. I wasn't chasing assumptions anymore. I was following proof. And with every piece we collected, the story that had been hidden for so long started to stand on its own. The day everything finally surfaced, the atmosphere in the building felt different. People moved more slowly, voices stayed low, and every door seemed to close a little faster than usual. Something serious was already in motion, even before anyone said it out loud. Dax acted normal at first. He walked in with the same confidence he always carried, like nothing in the world could touch him. But that changed the moment he was called into the room. The moment he saw who else was there, his expression tightened just slightly. I stayed at the back, not speaking. I didn't need to. Everything I had contributed was already in front of him. Reports, messages, records, laid out in a way that couldn't be brushed aside or explained away easily. At first, he tried to talk over it. Quick responses, confident tone, as if volume could replace truth. He denied involvement in a calm voice, but it didn't match what was being shown. Each question pushed him a little further away from control. The more he spoke, the less steady he became. There were pauses where he seemed to search for answers that weren't there anymore. He tried shifting blame, then changing details, but nothing aligned with the material in front of him. I watched quietly as the situation unfolded. This wasn't the same person who used to sit across from me making decisions without hesitation. Now he was reacting instead of leading, trying to hold together something that was already breaking apart. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. The evidence spoke louder than anything in the room. And for the first time, I wasn't the one being dismissed. I was simply there to see how far the truth had already reached. After that meeting, things moved quickly. There were no long delays or drawn-out discussions. Decisions were made in a way that left no room for discussion or delay. It was clear they wanted distance from what had just been uncovered. Dax didn't return after that. One day he was still part of the structure, and the next he was simply gone from it. No presence, no updates, no mention beyond formal language. People avoided speaking about it directly, as if saying too much might connect them to it. Soon after, an official message was shared within the company. It was carefully worded, focusing on internal issues and corrective action. Nothing detailed, but enough to confirm that something serious had taken place behind the scenes. The environment started shifting almost immediately. Meetings felt different, conversations became more cautious, and decisions were no longer made in the same way. It was like everyone was adjusting to a version of the place that had changed overnight. I stayed out of most of it at first. I didn't feel the need to rush into anything or respond right away. I just observed how quickly everything I had once been part of was being reorganized without him. Then I was called in. The discussion was simple and direct. No long explanations, no persuasion. Just recognition of what had been uncovered and how much had been overlooked before. They offered me a position again. Not the one I had before, but something different, something higher, with responsibility that reflected work I had already done but never been credited for at the time. I didn't respond immediately. I needed a moment to take it in. After everything that had happened, the offer felt less like a return and more like a correction that had taken too long to arrive. I didn't accept their offer. After everything settled, I took time to think about what I actually wanted, not what I used to chase out of habit. Going back would have meant stepping into the same space that had already cost me too much. Callum stayed in contact, but there was no pressure from him anymore. He simply laid out options and gave me space to decide. Over time, our conversations shifted from what had happened in the past to what could be built next. Eventually, I made a different choice. Instead of returning to the old environment, I joined efforts with him in a new direction. It wasn't about fixing what was broken anymore, it was about building something that didn't carry the same weight or history. The work felt different from the start. Decisions made sense, contributions were visible, and effort wasn't hidden or reshuffled behind the scenes. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was working in silence. Looking back, everything that once felt like the end had actually been a turning point. That lunch, the message, the silence afterward, it all connected in a way I didn't understand at the time. What looked like loss had actually cleared the space for something else to begin. I stopped measuring everything by what I lost. Instead, I focused on what I had regained: control over my work, clarity in my decisions, and respect for what I brought to the table. The chapter one thought had ended didn't just restart. It changed direction completely. And the moment I believed everything was falling apart turned out to be the exact moment things finally started to fall into place.